If you're anything like me, then you're one of these people who are constantly chopping and changing what openings you play. And the truth is, this could be really harmful to your chess. On the other hand, it could be really beneficial. As ever in the world of chess improvement, there's just so much conflicting information out there. So I sat down today and I did a little bit of research. I tried to find out, is this a harmful thing or is it actually quite useful? So before I go into what I feel are, the pros and the cons of changing openings, I'm just going to give you a bit of an overview about what I mean by changing openings. Obviously, you know what that means, it's changing openings, but it's obviously if you're playing, for example, E4, right, you're going to be facing a world of different openings, Sicilians, French, Scandinavians. What openings do you go into against E4, E5? Italian, you play the Royal Lopez. So E4 is not an opening, it's a branch of lots of different things. But for example, if you was going to play E4 and then you're going to play the Italian game, and then you think, oh, no, I don't quite like that. I'm gonna switch up to the Royal Lopez. Or against the Scandinavians, you're going to play a certain setup, but then you change around and you play something else. That sort of thing I'm talking about. Or you switch from E4 to a D4 system like the London system. You play the London system a little bit, and you don't quite like it, it's a bit boring, so you change to something else. You play B3, you play C4, and you're constantly switching around different types of openings. And that's just from the white side, right? That is, I think, the situation of quite a lot of people, or not many people I know, under 2,000 standard people who play online who go, yeah, I've just learned this one opening and I've stuck to it. Like, do you know anybody like that? 'Cause I don't really know anybody like that. It's always this constant chopping and changing. So that's basically, as I view, what it means to constantly change openings. And yeah, there are counter arguments to that. It's like, well, my argument has always been, yes, I do change around opening systems a little bit, but how do you know what opening to play if you don't experiment? So as I alluded to in the opening part of this video, it's just another minefield. I always think the openings are just a huge minefield of conflicting information. But let's try and get there. Let's try and form some sort of conclusion based on what a lot of different people think. So looking at the pros then, what is the pros of sticking to one opening? It seems pretty clear. You will develop a better understanding of that opening. You'll come to a greater degree of appreciation, the more subtleties of the types of the positions that you can get. You get to know the plans and ideas, you get to know the tactics, the nuances, if you like, of that one opening. You get really, really good at that one particular opening structure. But again, if it's E4, it's not one opening structure, it's lots of different opening structures that branch into lots of different opening structures, which, yeah, forever. It's crazy. So that is a pro, is sticking to an opening and really, really trying to like drill down in that opening. And that is a definite pro. Negatives, then, the cons to that is the opposite. So you get a little bit narrow minded if you just stick into one structure. For example, if you're a beginning sort of chess player and you think, well, I'm just going to learn the London, everybody's playing the London system. No, they're not, but you know what I'm saying. And I'm just playing this one system and I'm playing out the same moves because I don't have to think in the first 5, 6, 7 moves. And that could be quite harmful, I think. And in terms of long-term development, a lot of stronger players said and I sort of agree as well, as not a stronger player, but I agree with that. Just having that very narrow mindset of a particular structure, then you're not really developing as a player because you only know that one structure. If the position changed into different types of structures, or you find yourself, out of those narrow opening book moves, then you cannot really know what you're doing. Whereas if you've got a wide range of knowledge of different openings, you could argue, oh, I know what to do in this position. It's an isolated queen pawn. Yeah, I'll put my pieces here, put my pieces here. Oh, this is a really close center. White's going to play for space. And you know what you're playing because you've seen those structures before. I think there are two very good arguments to be had for both the pros and cons of changing openings and in also sticking to the same opening. And I think also a lot depends on, and this is often neglected, I feel, who you are as a chess player, how old you are, what your ambitions are, what's your starting strengths, where do you want to get to, do you play clubs in club tournament games, do you play online, do you play blitz, do you play? I think all of those questions are sometimes not really put into context of that. It's just a case of, oh, it's good for you, oh, it's bad for you. So I'm going to talk a little bit around the context, and this is a bit more of a podcast sort of a video. We appreciate that's fine, and a little bit rambling in places, but these are my thoughts, and these are my thoughts after what I've been researching for a number of years, really, on this issue, which is still not further on. But yeah, I think it's really important to take into account those factors. So if you are a beginning player and you are, 10 years old, that's surely different than if you're somebody who started chess age 50, right? And if you're a 10-year-old and you want to be a strong player and you're playing in lots of tournaments and you've got, the world at your feet, really, of opportunities in this day and age, then I think someone would probably argue E4, E5 structure, get a good grounding in that sort of classical development, classical E4, 5 structures, Roy Lopez, Italian games, on both the white and black side, and then sort of develop and then pick an opening. I think that would be probably the general advice. On the other hand, you're starting chess later in life, you've got limited amount of time, you don't intend to play in tournaments, then maybe sticking to one structure is absolutely fine. Maybe just playing the London system, the Collie system or something is ideal, but it could also be useful just to get a quick 6 months blast of the structures, almost like developing as you normally would if you'd got that time again by just going through lots of different structures for 6 months. You get some idea of all these different types of openings from both the white and black side, and then settling down onto a system. And I think this is better than just picking the system. Oh, I'm going to play the London, and you just play that, because at least you've got some experience if you're coming to chess a bit later on that you can fall back on if things don't quite turn out as you sort of planned in the opening and things sort of digresses into different types of systems. You can go, oh, actually, I do remember this because I played this as the friend. And, you can sort of revert back to at least some experience is better than none. Nothing to stop then that person picking out one opening and sticking to that opening and getting all the benefits, all the pros, the development of the ideas, the patterns, the typical sort of tactics and ideas, if by sticking to one opening and working through it, you get in there. And I've seen a really interesting video today, actually. I'll put it there on the screen. And this opening ADHD is quite an interesting way to phrase it. But I really like this person. I think I've come across his channel for the first time today. He talks a lot of sense in that video. So I recommend you have a look at that one. You've watched this one. And the main gist of that video, as I see it, is that you go through different stages when you learn an opening. And I sort of totally agree with what he was saying here, that you start off on this Patzer level when you first look at an opening, and he talks about macro and minor improvements. So you might look at a video that you see on YouTube, for example. I think that's what he says as well. And you go, oh, yeah, I get that idea. I can play that. Oh, I've won 5 games. I know what I'm doing. And you sort of reach a certain particular level. You might look into it a little bit further, maybe play over a couple of annotated games or read up on it or buy a course. And you get to a certain level, and then there's a sort of plateau of your skill on that opening. No longer you're automatically winning because you may be playing stronger players or players who know that system. And then any sort of improvements from then on are like minor level improvements, subtleties in different types of structures within that opening. And it's usually at this point which we switch openings because we get into a bit where I'm not quite like this. I'm not quite sure of this. This particular response after I played, 20 games online. I like it when Black does this, but when they do this, I don't really like it. They open up the center. I don't know what to do with my pieces. And then it's at this point that you change openings, and I'm massively guilty of this myself. E4 to B3 to C4 to try a D4 system back to E4, and it's all of that sort of thing, which is going back to what I talked about at the start of the video. This constantly chopping and change of openings, which potentially does harm your chess development. There are not many things I'm sure about in the world of chess openings, but there are 2 things I'm absolutely certain about, and it's these 2. It's number 1 would be playing really bad openings or really dubious openings, hoping the opponents fall into some sort of trap. And you usually see these, online memes, sort of stuff. So Magnus Carlsen recommend the Wayward Queen attack in one YouTube show. I thought, that's just crazy. That's just pretty poor, to be honest. But I'm not criticising Magnus Carlsen, but you know what I mean? You see that and you think that's not a good recommendation. That's for somebody who's really just learned how the pieces move. But Don't think there's any ground in ever playing a really bad opening. And I'm not talking about, I played the Owens as Black, right? And people say that's a terrible opening, but it's an opening and I think it's playable. It's maybe not top tier, but it's absolutely playable. Below, I don't know, 1800, 1900, 2000, absolutely fine. It's not a hopeless, let's hope that White's not seen this line before, or they have, now I've got a terrible position sort of opening structure. So that is playing junk openings, playing these ridiculous types of trap openings. I just think that's really, really bad. So that's the first thing. And the second thing I know is actually three things. I know three things. Isn't that amazing? The second thing that I know is picking openings that are just far too advanced for certain players. I think that's a really, really bad idea. Like, oh, I'm 1,000 rated. I'm going to learn the King's Indian. Some really complicated opening. It's just like got 10 billion different structures and different opening lines that White could play against it. That I just think is not really to be recommended. And again, you get these videos on YouTube, play this opening, so the only opening you need. And I think, yeah, not really. The third thing that I've come to know about openings is playing into openings that your opponent favours and has much more experience than you is ludicrous. And take, for example, I've used this example before. If I play e4 and your opponent plays e6, you're playing a French defense. There's no doubt about it. And your opponent, as the French player, has that every single time they get e4 on the board, which is approximately like 40% of the time. Right, 40% of the games they play as Black, they are playing the French. If you're a White e4 player, 10% of the games you play are French. Therefore, they have far more experience than you do. And I've tried to play against the French defense, and I've tried learning it. I've tried to learn the advanced line, and I've studied it. I bought the books, more than one book, on the French advanced variation, and I've studied it. I've done all the things you do. I've logged it into a database. I've gone over games. I've played thousands of games online. Maybe not thousands, well, probably. There's certainly hundreds. I've done all the things to learn the advance, and what I've been doing is just playing into the Black side. It's like lovely. We get this structure we like. Because if I've been studying at that level as somebody who was like 1800, then my opponent's probably been playing it for 10 years more than I've been studying it. And do I think because I bought a book off Amazon, Gary Lane book on the French, that I'm going to be better prepared than my opponent? No. So playing into the hands of the opponents is something that is just ludicrous. It's something that I think that if you're going to do that, try and play openings that are even a little bit dubious. Not dubious in the way we Queen attack dubious, but a little bit more offbeat. I'm talking about a play for this is an example, e6, and then should we go into the main lines? Probably not, because Black wants that. Should we go into the advanced lines? Probably not. Black wants that. What about knight d2? Same thing again. Exchange. Not great for White, but Black hates the French exchange. But I'm thinking about it in terms of psychology rather than just what does the computer think of this opening, right? And trying to get into the head of my opponent. I know as the French players hate the French exchange. Therefore, it's a valid reason. It's a valid option to play the exchange because they don't like it. Even if the position is somewhat symmetrical and probably favours Black to some degree, there is a valid argument for going against something that your opponent doesn't want to do. You can also mix that opening up. You could play different things, Monte Carlo, or go into a King's Indian attack. But whatever it is, it's playing into the hands of the opponents by giving them the opening that it just stands to reason. So what openings do I recommend? Asks nobody. But if someone did ask me what opening do I recommend, well, it entirely depends on the context of the individual. You see these absolutely bloody stupid forum questions where someone writes, can someone recommend me an opening? And that's it. And it's like, no, because there's so much context. How old are you? You know, how much do you play? What are your ambitions? What's your starting points? What's your history? What structures have you done before? You know, how much time are you going to put in? How much money and resources have you got? They just put recommend me an opening. Ludicrous. So I made a few replies back to those because I really hate those sorts of openings. But anyway, that's going off topic. That's more like rant form, isn't it, really? But what openings do I recommend? It's entirely on the person and you know, the sort of time that they've got and the context on the individuals. It's impossible to say. It really is quite impossible to say, other than And I'm going to go and do what people do anyway on those forwards. They recommend openings after having said don't recommend openings. Other than the traditional E4, E4, 5 structures, there's always going to be something of benefit there for anybody, even if you adjust the amount of time that you study that depending on how old you are, like I said earlier on in the video. So yeah, E4, E5 structures is chess, the backbone of chess. Getting a good grounding in those structures are pretty useful. After that, it completely depends on the context, on the individual, and it would be insane for me to sort of recommend any particular openings based on that. Not that you asked, but some people might ask that, so I'll put that in anyway. That turned out to be quite a long-winded essay on chess openings, but it's a big topic, and it's not easy just to say, I've discovered this, it's this, that's the answer. If I found anything out in chess over the years, that there are many different ways, maybe different ideas, many different types of development prospects, different ways you can do it. You can specialize in endgames, openings, tactics, you can study different things. It's very, very different, and it's very, very different depending on who you are as an individual. The pros and cons of this. Could it be harmful changing your chess openings quite a lot? Yeah, I think it probably could. Could it also be a benefit? Yeah, I think it probably could. If you've got any opinions on this topic, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can put them in the comments if you want to. I am, like everybody else, just learning all the time. This is the beauty of chess, really. No matter what level you're at, you're always learning new things. I was absolutely amazed when I was speaking to Luke McShane once sat on a train with him for a while, half an hour or so, just battered him with chess questions, to be fair. Sorry, Luke. And I was amazed to discover he still learns tactical patterns all the time, like online, online blitz games, he learns tactical patterns. It's like grandmasters are still learning tactical patterns through online blitz games. So that's quite amazing. But yeah, chess is this big, big area. It's very, very complex. Anybody who says, this is the right answer, this is the way to do it, I'm very distrustful of those. Anyone who says, I absolutely believe this and no one else is right, I'm a bit distrustful of that sort of opinion. I think I'll leave it there, and I think I've gone on long enough, but thanks for watching, and yeah, goodbye.